Welcome back to the Data Protection Diaries, welcome back to the vlog. In today's video we're going to be talking about the practicalities of dealing with a data subject access request or a DSAR. So we're going to be looking at 5 things that you can do to make handling a subject access request both more efficient but also more effective for the individual who is requesting the information. But before we get started, please do make sure that you hit the subscribe button, which you'll see in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Also like this video and drop any comments down below as well. How do you deal with subject access requests? Are they a real burden for your business? Have you found a way to improve that process? Is there any hints, any tips that you would like to share? All of those things are just really useful and help people understand more about what we do here on the channel. But anyway, for now, let's get on with what we want to talk about today. Subject access requests, or data subject access requests as they are now known, are requests from individuals who are looking to have a copy of the personal data which an organization holds about them. Now, there are a number of factors that come into a subject access request, specifically around whether or not information is being processed, why that information is being processed, but also what that information contains. Now, for some organizations, data subject access requests can be very burdensome, they can be very large, and they can take a lot of time and a lot of resource to deal with. But there are ways that you can refine that process, and there are ways that you can make it more efficient. And dealing with the practicalities of data subject access requests can, in some cases, make the whole process a lot easier for everybody involved. The first challenge that we often find when we're talking to clients about their subject access requests is around identification. So who has made that request? How do we know that they are permitted to have access to this information? How can we be sure that this is the right person? How can we be sure that we are talking to the individual? Of course, the way to do that is to gain identification. Now, the challenge with ID is that different people will have access to different forms of identification. Some people may have access to a passport, some people may have access to a driving license, other people may only have access to a utility bill, a council tax bill, or something of that nature. The first thing that you need to do is identify whether or not you really need to confirm the identity of the requester at all. Do you have a current ongoing relationship with that individual? Has the request come in on the back of a complaint about your service or a complaint about a product that they may have purchased from you? Are they an employee of the organization? Has the request come in from an email address that you already hold on your customer information system so you can verify them that way? All of these things are opportunities where you can look for points of reference where you may already know who this individual is, and therefore you don't need to spend your time trying to get additional identification out of them. If for any reason you do need to get additional identification, so if you don't know who these people are, you haven't had any direct dealings with them, then keeping it simple, asking for a copy of a utility bill, asking for a copy of a council tax bill, or just a copy or a picture of a driving license, something that confirms their name, is generally all that you are going to need. The first point here is make sure that even while you're waiting for that identification, I would always start the rest of the process, so make sure that you're starting to look for the information that you may hold on this individual, because that is going to speed up the process down the line. In at number 2 is looking at the scope of the request. Now, many requests that I have seen over the years have come in with a very simple sentence, and that sentence just says, I want to know everything you know about me. I want a copy of everything that you hold about me. Now, in some instances, that can be quite an easy thing to deal with if there's been quite a short time frame where there's been any engagement with the individual, if they've not been an employee for very long, if they've only been a customer and they've only purchased 1 or 2 things, that can be quite an easy thing to deal with. But what brings challenges is when you have people that have been an employee for a long period of time, maybe 15, 20 years, somebody that has been a customer for a long period of time, maybe they've held an insurance policy for multiple years, and bringing together all information is going to take a lot of time. The next thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you are going back to the requester, acknowledging the request, but asking for some clarity on what kind of information might you be looking for. Now, this isn't about hiding something, this isn't about trying to avoid providing information. This is really about making sure that the information that you're going to give to them is relevant and it's pertinent to their request. So you can ask questions such as, is there a particular time frame you would like me to look at? Obviously your complaint may have started in July last year. Would you like me to look between July last year and now? You went through a redundancy process. That redundancy process started in April. Would you like me to look between April and now? Is there any particular sets of information that you are looking for? Would you like me to search in particular folders, particular parts, particular areas of the business? Now, the individual doesn't have to give you this information. They don't have to narrow down that scope. That is not a requirement. But in my experience, 9 times out of 10, if you start to explain to somebody that you will be able to give them more tailored and more targeted information, if they can refine that scope for you, people are much more inclined to do it. Tip number 3 is looking at your search criteria. Now, if you are fortunate enough to have access to any kind of e-discovery tool, so some of the people watching this may have Office 365, and with that you can get a very comprehensive e-discovery tool. Refining your search criteria is absolutely essential when you're looking at trying to minimize the effect of the work associated with dealing with a DSAR. The first thing you're going to want to do is understand who it is that you are searching for and how the business, how the organization talks about individuals. So how do you reference people? Is it by initials? Is it by surname? Is it by title and surname? Is it by full name? Do customers or employees have an employee number or a customer reference number, for instance? Once you've started to pinpoint those different pieces of information, you can then start to build your search criteria. So you're going to want to be looking for specifically the individual's full name, potentially their initials, obviously an employee or a customer number, potentially a surname. Do they have a well-known nickname within the organization? So my full name is Richard, but everybody calls me Rich. So would you be looking for Rich Marigold rather than Richard Marigold on its own? The other part of defining your search criteria is about where you're looking for information. Again, if you're using a review of emails, if you're doing any kind of discovery of email, what you don't want to be looking for is the individual's name within any emails, because just because they have sent or received an email doesn't necessarily mean that information is about them. If an employee has been in a company a long time and your search results pull up every single time they have sent an email and their email is their full name, you will return hundreds of thousands of results. And the vast majority of those results are going to be about nothing. They're going to be about meetings, holiday requests, they're going to be company memos, all sorts of other things. What we are looking for is information that is about the individual. So when you're defining your search criteria, searching within the subject header of the email, so what was the title, what was the subject of the email, and searching within the body of the email can really help you to define your search criteria. It can help you reduce the amount of information that is recalled through that search, and it can really help you to start pinpointing other references and other points of reference where the individual may have been referenced in a certain way. Those points, you can then rerun the searches again, start looking for more specific points of reference, and you will find that you end up with a much cleaner, much more usable set of data from which you can start to extract any personal data specifically about this individual. Step 4, this relates specifically to reviewing emails. Now, one of the big challenges when you do a big discovery and you pull off a lot of email information is that you will find if there has been an email trail, so if more than one person has been involved in that email conversation, then the system will tend to pull up copies of that email from every single one of those individuals. So you have one email, 10 people were copied into it, you now have 10 copies of one email. If that email was replied to by one person and they replied to all, you now have 10 copies of the reply to that email. You now have 20 emails where only really 2 of them are original. Now, obviously, you can see that this just kind of multiplies, and this is often where, when people run searches, you end up with hundreds of thousands of search results for emails, because it's pulling in every single time an email has been sent and every copy of the email that it was sent to. So a copy of the email for every single person in that email trail. To reduce the burden of that, what you need to do is you need to look for the end of that email trail. So sort the email by date, find the last email in the trail, pick one of the individuals from the list, one of the individuals from the sent to list, and then follow the trail back up for that single individual, and that will give you a single set of the email trail that you can then use to start determining whether or not there's personal data contained within it. Doing this is going to vastly reduce the number of emails that you have to sift through, and again, it's also going to reduce the amount of information and the amount of peripheral information that may or may not have to be provided to the individual. My 5th and final piece of advice when you are looking at kind of simplifying or improving your DSAR process is to consider how you provide the information to the individual once all of your searches have been done, once you have identified what counts as personal data. How you get that information, how you provide that information to the requester can make a huge difference in the amount of work that you have to do. Very often, the initial response to a DSAR is to pull off copies of emails, copies and screenshots of databases, CRMs, information management systems, whatever it may be, anywhere that there is information, anywhere that there is notes. What tends to happen then is that people will then go through all of that information. They will go through those emails, through that documentation, and they will redact anything that relates to third-party individuals. So anything that doesn't relate to the requester can then obviously be removed. Now, this is a very important process, because what we don't want to do is give somebody information that they're not privy to. But what it is also is a very time-consuming and very complicated process. It takes a lot of time to find the third-party information. You have to determine whether or not that information is appropriate. You have to make sure you're using appropriate redaction tools. So make sure you're using a good full copy of Adobe rather than just Adobe Reader. Or you're going to have to go and outsource it to a DSAR bureau, somebody that can do that work for you, potentially even buy some software. All of these options are potentially costly, and they also take a lot of time. But what you can do is, rather than redacting the information that isn't relevant or doesn't reflect or have anything to do with the requester, is you can actually extract the information that is relevant to the request and that is about the individual, so their personal data. You can remove that information from the context, from the email, from the system, from the database, and you can place that in a clean, separate document. The important thing here to remember is that the individual is entitled to a copy of their personal data. They are not necessarily entitled to the original format or how it is. You can provide a transcript of the information that you hold. Now, if you are extracting information about somebody from an email and you place that information into an Excel spreadsheet, for instance, you can allocate the date, time, the location of that information. So an email, a CRM system, a personnel file. You can then put the pertinent information within the Excel spreadsheet, and you will find that once you have finished, you can actually provide to the requester a simple document that contains all of the information that is about them, with dates, with locations, and with the relevant information to fulfill their request, without having to provide them sheets and sheets and sheets of paper, gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of electronic files, and without running the risk that when you've done that redaction, or when you did that redaction, that you may have actually missed something and you may have provided something about somebody that you shouldn't have provided. Now, that's not something that generally gets covered very often, but it is a very, very effective way of responding to DSARs. It saves a lot of effort, it saves a lot of time in terms of redaction, and for the individual requester, it provides them information in a much more usable, easy to see format, which often helps to appease any concerns that they may have about the information that you hold about them. The main thing to remember here is that when you're dealing with a DSAR, making sure that the process is effective and efficient is important, not just for you and for your organization, but it's also important for the requester. The requester just wants to know what you hold about them. They want to be able to see information in a clear, usable format. And from a commercial and organizational perspective, you want to be able to provide that information in the best possible fashion and with the minimal possible fuss and impact on your day-to-day business. Now, hopefully some of these tips will help you to do that. If you do have any questions, of course, our email address or my contact details are at the end of the page. As always, this has been a fairly succinct view on the world. So if you do have any comments or you'd like to add anything to the conversation, please do drop those down in the comments below. Of course, make sure that you like, subscribe, all those wonderful things. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks very much.